Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head down to England once again and we're going to have a look at beer from another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. As I've told you on the channel previously, I always enjoy introducing new breweries to you here on the channel, and these guys seem to have had a little bit of attention over the last little while. I think a few of the English beer tubers have had a look at their beers. I know that Craig from Kent Beer Reviews and Dean from Dean's Beer Reviews have both tried some of their beers, and they also seem to do a quite wide variety of different styles actually. So yeah, when it came to choosing a beer from this brewery, I just picked two that were styles that you don't come across very often. But the one we're going to look at today is a style that I very much enjoy, and I do wish that there were more of them on the market. Back over in Sweden, they do seem to have a little bit of a kind of resurgence in this particular style at the moment. So hopefully this is a nice example of it. So for this review then, we are going to head to a little place called Ripley in Derbyshire, which is just to the kind of north of Nottingham and Derby. And we're going to have a look at my first beer from Pentrich Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called the Jetglo Moon. It comes in 8% ABV, and this one is an Imperial Black IPA. Now, as you'll know if you've watched the channel for any length of time, this is a style that I really like very, very much. I've had some really nice examples of black IPAs over the years, and for a long time I actually thought that you know, for a black IPA to be good, it had to be Imperial, because usually the Imperials have a little bit of that kind of caramelly sort of thing in the malt base, but I have had some really nice examples of just regular black IPAs in recent times. But probably my favourite black IPA that I've ever had would be the Black Salts and Body Malts from Toel in Copenhagen in Denmark. You know, that's an awesome beer, and I'm yet to find a black IPA that tops that actually. That was just beautifully done. So if you ever come across that beer, that is one that I would highly recommend that you have a go at. But like I say, when I was looking at what beers to pick from Pentrich Brewing to review for you here on the channel, there was two that caught my eye, and this was one of them, and you'll see the other one a little bit later on. So yeah, very much looking forward to trying this one. Nice to introduce another English brewery to you here on the channel, so I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So let's see how we get on. The Jetglo Moon Imperial Black IPA, 8% ABV from Pentrich Brewing Company in Ripley in Derbyshire down in England. So yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I'll do in the future from Pentrich Brewing Company. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the English beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite regularly at the moment because I am enjoying a little bit of an extended period at home in the motherland of Scotland, so the English beers are very accessible, which is never a bad thing. Thriving beer scene down there these days, as I've told you many a time before. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Pentrich Brewing Company. So Pentrich Brewing Company, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Ripley in Derbyshire, which is to the north of Nottingham and Derby. Those two cities, of course, are quite close together. I'm not sure if you can class that as the Midlands of England. I know where the cities are on the map in England, but I always forget where the county lines are. But this company was founded back in 2015 by Joe Noble and Ryan Cummings, who were childhood friends. So Joe has a background in marketing, and he originally studied history and philosophy, while Ryan has a background in marketing as well, and he worked for the Iron Gate Group, who are basically like a business supplies company. They seem to do a whole host of different things actually. But the pair started homebrewing back in 2013 apparently, and they soon found themselves hooked with this hobby. And after positive feedback on their beers, they decided that they wanted to go for it, turn professional and start their own company. But from October of 2014 they began to cuckoo brew, or gypsy brew, whatever you want to call it, at Landlocked Brewing, and they invested in a fermentation vessel using their remaining savings, and this allowed them to upscale their brews from 40 litres on the very small kit that they had to 800 litre batches. But in 2015 they moved into their brewery in Asher Lane Industrial Park, and they started off with a 6 BBL brewing system, but they've recently received funding and will increase the capacity of the brewery even further than that. I think they're going to invest in a new kind of brew kit, if you like, and get a lot more tanks and things like that, because they did get quite a heavy investment. I think it was about £100,000 or something something that they were going to put into the brewery. So quite an impressive amount actually. But as of January 2021, when I'm reviewing this beer for you, these guys have produced 110 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and if you go and have a look at what's available on the House of Trembling Madness, for example, which is where I got this beer, you will see that they do have a good variety of different things, and that is quite impressive for a brewery who are, I mean, they are 5 years old in fairness, but it is quite good to see a brewery who are putting a wide variety of different things out there rather than just focusing on one style. There's quite a lot of breweries who are just focusing on, you know, hazy IPAs and things these days. So it's quite refreshing to come across a brewery who do have a whole variety of different things. But like I say, I love black IPAs, and so this is the one that I chose to start with for my first review from them. So fingers crossed it's good. But yeah, nice to introduce this brewery on the channel, like I said. I hope that you guys enjoy this video. But I hope I can try some more beers from these guys beyond the next one that I've got. But as I say, that's all I can really tell you about Pentrich Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can, of course, check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. So as you can see, the artwork is, you know, pretty straightforward on this, and the other beers that you'll find in the range are very similar to this, just different colour schemes basically. But there you can see Jetglo Moon, which I think is a really quite cool name. You can see Imperial Black, India Pale Ale, 8% ABV, and as the label tells you, this one is brewed with Amarillo, Chinook and Citra hops. Amarillo was always one of my favourite hops back in the day, lovely big oily orange character, about 12% alpha acid. Chinook is that big piney resonance one again. I think that might actually be about 13 or 14% alpha acid, but big dark grapefruit, big piney resins, and then a lovely big kind of Citra hoppy quality. So yeah, lovely bit of kind of mango from that, and then other little tropical fruit complexities in there. But remember, when we're talking about black IPAs, these beers, these hops rather, do tend to behave in slightly different ways. Simcoe is a very good example. In a New England IPA, soft, really soft, juicy passion fruit. In a West Coast IPA, you know, more oily. But then in a black IPA like this, it will give you some really interesting red fruit. So these hops, I think, will be really interesting to look at in an Imperial Black like this. The interesting thing I'm noticing about this one is that it says it has wheat and oats in it, this beer. I don't remember the original black IPAs having oats in them, come to think of it. I thought they were, some of them had a little bit of wheat in them in fairness, but I don't remember oats being involved, to be honest. So I wonder if this is maybe a slightly more kind of New Englandish type take on the Imperial Black IPAs. But regardless, I think it should be a really nice beer. It's quite highly rated. This is a 440ml can. I think I paid like £5 or £6 for this one. So let's assume that it's £6 at the more expensive end of the scale. So that's roughly about 70, you know, about 70 Swedish krona. About, for those of you watching over there, it's about, you know, maybe €7 and maybe about, yeah, $7.50, $8 American. So yeah, that covers quite a lot of different currencies for you. But yeah, nicely presented this one. Very straightforward, slick artwork. Let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting. It says that this one was canned on the 30th of November 2020 and it's best before the 30th of May 2021. So black IPAs, I do think you have to give these a little bit of time in the can to let the fruits come out a little bit more. But yeah, it's each to their own. You know, beer is always subjective. Different people like different things. But yeah, let's open this up and get on with the tasting. Very, very curious about this beer. Absolutely. So yeah. Oh yeah, this is, you can see from the pour here, the oats and the wheat definitely giving this beer quite a hazy vibe actually. But yeah, I have missed the black IPAs. Back over in Sweden, you know, we have had a little bit of a resurgence in this style. They were brewing a lot of Schwarzbiers, and then they started brewing a lot of you know, black IPAs, both Imperials and regulars. You know, I've got a Stigbergets black IPA waiting for me when I do make it back to Sweden, but and I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, it's nice to see that these beers are starting to get a little bit more attention. I mean, for a long time, as I said, the focus has been on all of these hazy New England IPAs, and they're nice, but you know, you do get bored of the same thing after a while. So I'm glad to see that we're getting more West Coasters, more black IPAs. I've even seen quite a few red IPAs and rye IPAs these days too, which are always welcome. But as you can see with this beer, it's poured a lovely dark kind of ebony rosewood colour, this one. You can see that the head on this beer is about a half finger. It's a frothy, I would say kind of light very light sort of beigey colour. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass. There's a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. But yeah, in terms of a black IPA, to be honest with you, there's not a lot that's surprising about the appearance of this one. I will say though, I can get a big whiff of orange from the Amarillo in this beer, so that's going to be really interesting when we actually have a taste of it. But yeah, the appearance of this beer is not surprising for a black IPA. You will notice though that it is actually more of a kind of Coca-Cola colour, and I think that's the oats and the wheat that are doing a lot of that in this beer. So I really like how that goes together in this one for sure. But yeah, when we shine the light through this beer, it does have that really kind of Coca-Cola, Pepsi type colour to it, which is quite interesting. So definitely a more hazy black IPA rather than the kind of, you know, pitch black, almost ones that would be transparent if they weren't so dark, if that makes sense. So yeah, the wheat and the oats are definitely giving a little bit of haze to this beer. But yeah, certainly looks the part for a black IPA. Nothing overly surprising about it considering what style it is. So let's take a closer look at the aroma and just see how we get on with this one. That is pretty nice actually. Yeah. So I mean, you can smell this. You can smell the influence of the oats and the wheat out of this one straight away. I'm going to say as well with the fruits, you get a lovely big oily orange out of this one. Absolutely. But yeah, the malty base of this just comes together really quite nicely. There's a lovely sort of well-fired bread crusty quality to this one. I hesitate to say Carafa actually, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a wee bit of like a German Carafa malt. Carafa, of course, is a trademark malt of the Weyermann maltery in Bamberg in Franconia, near Nuremberg in the north of Bavaria in Germany. And there's just something about this beer. There is something that's telling me there's a little bit of there is just something that's telling me there might be a wee bit of Carafa in this one, or it could just be like a very dark crystal. But the smoothness of this beer is very nice and very encouraging actually. So yeah, what you get out of this one I think is like a slightly well-fired toasty bread crust. I don't really get black malt out of it. It's not quite harsh enough to be black malt. So yeah, like a really well-fired bread crust. Good little bit of a brown bready character, like a sort of wholemeal brown bready kind of thing going on in this one, which I think works really nicely. But yeah, it's the malty backbone of this beer is very nice. I mean, you can smell that smoothness from the oats in there, and the wheat, the slightly thicker wheaty quality, is just making those brown bready notes seem a little bit thicker. Of course, it's the Carafa or the dark crystal or whatever it is that's in here giving you the darkness in the beer that's really kind of making it more like a brown bread and bread crusty sort of thing, rather than it just being very smooth. So it is almost like a slightly more New Englandy take, I guess, on the black IPAs. I think that would be a really interesting thing. I do wonder if, you know, Trillium and Treehouse and stuff have black IPAs that have been brewed on the small batches, because those would be really interesting to try. The original black IPAs were a little bit more just kind of straight up black malt and bready. I don't think, as I say, I think the main difference between this one and the old ones that I would have had would be the lack of oats. I don't think they used oats. I know they used wheat in them, but I really don't think they used oats in these beers. But again, if some of you are home brewing nerds and you know better than me on that, then do let me know in the comments section below. But yeah, the more and more that you smell of this beer, you get that you can really get that the sort of smooth bready kind of note that just comes out more and more, and the oats really just give the beer a little bit of sweetness the further that you progress into this one. I can get a nice little bit of brown sugar out of this. There's a lovely kind of sweet caramel there, a little bit of a McVitie's biscuity digestive-y sort of thing to this one, which I do quite like as well. And I do like a little bit of sweetness. With black IPAs, I like a little bit of brown sugar in them, just to kind of round the beer up a little bit better and give it, you know, a little bit more depth. So the malt base has kind of everything that I would look for in it. Roasty, toasty bread crust, good bit of brown bread, some sweet caramel, a little bit of biscuity graininess, and everything else. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that kind of transpires, or how it's you know, how it comes across in the actual flavour profile. But on the hoppy side of things then, on the green side of the hops, you do get a little bit of earthiness out of this one. You can smell the Chinook in this. The Chinook's a lovely hop to use in these black IPAs, because using the Chinook instead of, say, Columbus will give you a big spiciness. I think the depth that Chinook gives you, along with that kind of grapefruity property that it has, Chinook's just lovely. Chinook I think is a must if you want to do a proper black IPA for me. You have to use a bit of Chinook in it. So you get quite a bit of pine resin out of this one. You can smell a little bit more of a kind of floral aromaticity to it, but not a lot for me. This beer is quite distinctly pine resinous on the green component of things, and I think that's the most prominent component of it. So a bit of earthiness in the back of the nose, a little bit more kind of pine resiny on the, towards the front of the nose, but there is a wee touch of a kind of grassy kind of quality in there as well. It's almost got a little bit of that kind of minty fresh sort of thing going on with it from the piney side of things, to be honest with you. So yeah, that's really interesting. So yeah, take a little bit of time to enjoy that. It's a really interesting green component that you get out of this, but yeah, quite distinctly, definitely quite distinctly pine resinous, I would say. But yeah, on the fruity side of things, for me, the fruity side of this beer is quite dominated by the big oily orange of the Amarillo. Absolutely, the Amarillo is playing the anchor in this beer for sure. So lovely big orangey notes. You can get a good little bit of the grapefruity quality from the Chinook as well. For me, it's a little bit hard to detect what the Citra's doing, to be honest with you. In the aroma, at least, maybe it will come out a little bit more in the flavour. But yeah, the Amarillo, Amarillo is quite interesting because it sort of stays orangey regardless of what kind of hop you put in it. But the Citra, there's maybe a little touch of a kind of red figgy sort of thing coming out of this one. And maybe that's what's going on with the Citra in this beer, because Citra normally gives you mango and sort of citrus, like a little bit of lemon lime and things like that sometimes, and you can get lychees and gooseberries and stuff from it as well. I do get a wee tiny little bit of gooseberry, which is quite interesting, but other than that, the Citra for me is fairly hard to detect. I mean, you get some faint hints of mango in there, and it's quite surprising that you get that when you mix this hop with a black malt base. When you consider what happens to Simcoe when you put it in a dark malt base, it really becomes big and red and fruity, like, sort of plummy and raisiny almost. It's interesting to see. With Citra, I don't know if I've had a black IPA that's had Citra in it before, at least not that I've been aware of. So yeah, I would always say that Amarillo and Simcoe are probably the two hops that you would want to think about using as, flavour aroma hops in a black IPA. But yeah, the aroma this one certainly has my attention. A lovely big oily orangey character to it, a little bit of that darker kind of grapefruit and red fruity sort of thing, which will be the Chinook, and Citra I think is giving it just a teeny little bit of an almost gooseberry quality, which is quite unusual, as I said, in a black IPA. But yeah, take a little bit of time to mull the aroma this one over, but we're going to taste this one now. I'm just really curious about this. So yeah, this one is the Jetglo Moon, an 8% Imperial Black IPA from Pentrich Brewing Company in Ripley, just a little bit to the north of Nottingham and Derby in Derbyshire down in England. I guess that's the English Midlands. As I say, correct me on that if I'm wrong. But let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Curious about this beer for sure. Yeah. I'm just going to say straight away, that is damn solid. Thumbs up to Pentrich for this. I like this. I like this one for sure. The black IPAs are so underrated. They really are. And if you can pull off a good one like this, then I think it says a lot for the brewery. Because as I say, if they're putting this style out there, it just kind of says a lot for what they're doing. And as I say, when I saw this brewery, I mean, they had IPAs, they had double IPAs, and I saw they had a black IPA. It's just what caught my eye. And I thought, I don't think I've had an English black IPA in a very long time. And I just thought, why not? Let's have a go at this. And I'm glad I did. Seriously glad that I did. Thumbs up to Pentrich for this one. It really is a shame that this style just doesn't get more attention. I would love to see, the likes of Dea and, Dea's quite close to these guys probably, the Deas, the Verdants, the kind of Cloudwaters and stuff. I'd love to see these guys having a go at black IPAs. They probably have, and because I've been in Sweden I'll probably have missed them. But this is just damn solid. It really is. It's very nicely done, this. Yeah. I would say, from what I remember of the black IPAs before, I do remember them being slightly more bitter than this, in fairness. But then again, this is a whole thing that's kind of come with the shift of the beer market towards the haze craze. So I don't think this is quite as bitter as the black IPAs that I would have had back, 2016 or whatever. But the malt base is very similar. The fruity side of the beer is really well executed as well. it's really, really nicely done this. So a huge thumbs up to Pentrich Brewery on this one. I'm looking forward to the next beer that I've got from these guys. I'm not going to say what beer it is just now, but I'm certainly looking forward to trying that one on the basis of this one. Yeah, this is awesome. It's really, really nice. I actually nearly didn't buy this one because it was the other one that caught my eye first, and then when I was making my second order I just thought, you know, fuck it, why not? And I'm really glad, very, very glad. So yeah, that's it. But yeah, let's try and break down the flavour of this one, but I'm just going to say straight away, that's a very impressive solid black IPA. So yeah, let's try and analyse the flavour a little bit more. So straight away with this beer, you can feel that nice kind of toasty, well-fired, bread crusty sort of thing. That blankets the middle of your palate, in the middle third of your tongue. I would not be surprised if it's some sort of carafa malt that's in this. And there's something that's really telling me it is. There might be some English varieties of malt that can replicate the sort of flavours you'll get from carafa, but the names of them kind of escape me at the moment. But there is just something about the way that this goes together, because the bread crust, that well-fired bread crust, it is at the same time it's quite smooth, so you can feel that just blanketing that middle third of your tongue, and that just kind of sits there. That forms the backbone of the beer. But as you go into that border region between the middle third and your back third of your palate, the bitterness of that really intensifies, and it becomes, pardon me, it almost becomes a little bit more like a roasted barley, special B, you know, like black malt kind of thing. You do get a little bit of that really intense bitterness in that border region there. But sitting on top of that though, on top of that slightly smoother bread crusty kind of note, is like a really, you know, is a very sort of smooth brown bready quality actually. I really, really like that about this beer, absolutely. And it's that combination, you see, it's that combination of the brown bread and the bread crusty note that really makes me think carafa. That really is what makes me think about this beer. But yeah, you will notice if you go to the front corners of your palate and then move diagonally backwards, you do get a few little slightly woody undertones to the beer that come out of it the further you go into the aftertaste. And in fairness, on top of that kind of brown bready sort of thing, it does feel like a kind of fluffy brown bread, but on top of that, in the middle of your palate, you start to get the oaty smoothness there. You can feel the oats just having an influence and giving you a little bit of a smooth and slightly sweet quality in the middle of your palate there. And then on top of that, you start to get a few little brown sugary notes. There is a bit of a sweet caramelly note to it, but then as you move out from the very centre of your palate, you get more of those kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of things. So the middle third of your palate for me is very, very layered actually, and I think it works very, very nicely. It's not madly complex, but it's got, I like the combination of flavours that's going on in here. I think the oats add a nice kind of smoothness to the beer. The brown sugars in this one, I do wonder if there's a wee touch of caramel or something like that in this, or you know, maybe Cara Munich. Cara Munich might be another option there, just going by how bready this beer is. I wouldn't be surprised if it's Cara Munich. It does feel like there's just something that's telling me that quite a few of the malts in this beer might be German, but then there are quite a few English malts that can do a job as well. I mean, I would be curious, I don't know if I've had a black IPA that's had Maris Otter in it. Maris Otter's a beautiful malt actually. So could be a little bit of Maris Otter in here. Some of the biscuity elements and some of the little brown sugary notes are Maris Otter like as well. But yeah, the sweet caramel note in the middle of the palate's very nice. That's covering the booziness. That will be part of, you know, part of that won't just be down to the malts. It will be down to the kind of boozy side of the beer too. But yeah, the way that the brown sugars and the kind of oats interact is very nice, and that sort of biscuity McVitie's digestive sort of thing is really nice as well. But that middle third of your palate is really just very, very nicely done. So as I said, when you go to the back of that middle third of your palate, on that little border region, you get a really quite bitter black malty kind of character, but then as you go into the back third of your palate, you can feel that the thickness of the beer just picks up a little bit, and that's the wheaty element to it. At the very back of the palate, you've got a little bit of a kind of wheaty bitiness there, but you can still feel a little bit of that kind of toasty, bread crusty quality kind of sitting on top of that one. So it is a wheat thickness, but it's like a brown, it's like a very kind of condensed, like very squashed, dense, brown bready sort of thing with a little bit of grainy toastiness to it. So yeah, I like how, I do like how that goes together, absolutely. The malty side of this beer is just really nicely executed. Like I say, I do wonder, about the oats in this, because I don't remember the original black IPAs having the oats. I think this is probably something that's evolved from the New England IPAs, but it certainly works. It really, really does work. So yeah, absolutely gets my approval. But yeah, I think that covers the malt base of this beer pretty well, to be honest with you. So let's focus on the hoppy side of the beer. Back corners of the palate, definitely a little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward from that though, it's hard to say where the earthiness would come from in this one, but it builds a good bridge between the kind of roasty backbone of the beer. But as you move further forward, very quickly this beer becomes really piney and resinous, and that's the it really becomes very piney and resinous right away, and that is the Chinook. Chinook is, as I said, I think Chinook is a kind of must for a black IPA like this, and it works out really, really well in this one. So you can feel that nice big piney resinous quality just lingering there on the sides of your palate. It does intensify as you get a little bit further forward on the palate. You've got a really nice little bit of spiciness on the front kind of corners of your tongue, but as you go round the front curve of the palate, the beer is just a little bit lighter and more kind of grassy in my mind. You do get a little bit of that, so there's quite an intense change there on the corners of the palate when it becomes more grassy, but you do get a fair little bit of floral quality mixing in with the grassiness as well, which is interesting. But yeah, on that front third of your palate then, as I always say, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. And for me, the fruity side of this beer, it's kind of what I was expecting from the aroma, to be honest with you. It's really orangey orientated, and as you know if you've watched the channel for any length of time, I'm a sucker for these big orangey orientated beers. So yeah, if you go towards the back of that front third of your palate, you can feel there is a little bit of a slightly more intense roasty bread crusty sort of thing, but as you move into that front third of your palate, you've got a little bit of that darker grapefruity note there, but it does have a wee bit of an almost plummy, raisiny kind of thing. There's a bit of a red fruity element in there, and that's the Chinook. Again, this is why Chinook is a kind of must-do in these black IPAs. The likes of Eureka and Williamette are also really interesting hops to use in these beers, but as you move further forward, you get a little bit of that kind of you really do get a little bit of a kind of juicier, red fruity, kind of figgy sort of thing out of this one, which is quite interesting. I'm guessing this is the Citra, but you can pick up like faint elements of that trademark mango from Citra at the same time, but then as you reach the front half of that front third of your tongue, the front sixth of your tongue if you will, you get that big oily orangey component from Amarillo, and that's just sitting there dominating that very front part of your palate. Amarillo, as we know, works very, very well in these black IPAs, but I love the orangey orientation of this one. But then again, remember, I'm a sucker for these orangey leaning beers, so maybe you have to take this review with a bit of pinch of salt in that sense, but this one just really ticks the boxes for me for what I would want from a black IPA. The breadiness works very well, it's got the brown sugar that I would want, and it's got the orangey qualities as well. And red fruity characters work with these black IPAs as well, but then I guess you would get the arguments about it being a Cascadian Dark, and I think a Cascadian Dark is basically a black IPA that really has a bit of Chinook and a bit of Cascade in it normally. So yeah, it's one of the more citrusy, I guess you could say, black IPAs that I've had, but it works really, really nicely, this one actually. And I think the slightly boozier quality, I do think this beer, you probably could try this at a 6.5% or something like that, but I think it might lose a little bit of something if you did take that away. I think the contribution of the alcohol to the brown sugar flavours in this are probably the reason that I enjoyed the Imperial black IPAs a little bit more than the regular ones, because it just gives the beer a little bit of sweetness and a bit more depth, if you like. But yeah, the fruity side of this beer works very well. There is a wee touch of zestiness, a little bit of orange zestiness mixing in with the kind of grassy floral component on the front tip of the tongue. But yeah, this is just a beautifully executed black IPA. As I say, I'm very glad that I got this. I nearly didn't, and I never would have known that I would have regretted that, but I'm very glad that I just decided bugger it and bought this one as well. So yeah. But yeah, I'm certainly, on the basis of this one, very curious about the other beer that I've got from these guys as well. And as I say, the two beers I bought from this brewery are not commonly brewed styles actually, so I maybe need to try, the next time I get something from these guys, I probably will need to have a go at one of the IPAs. So I maybe get an IPA and a lager, or a stout or something, for the next time. But yeah, I think this looks or this one feels like really, really nice actually. So let's round off with the mouthfeel then. So with this beer, I would say that it's kind of top end to mid bodied for me. Black IPAs though, I've always found them, I don't think a full bodied black IPA is quite, you know, hard to come across, to be honest. I think this style suits being in the sort of mid range, but yeah, it's got a lovely smoothness to the mouthfeel. This one, the carbonation again just helps that out a little bit. Just a very, very smooth beer that builds a little bit of dryness the further you go into the aftertaste with it. There's a nice little bit of hoppy bitterness to this one. The kind of roasty, toasty malts are contributing to that as well. I think this beer must be about 50 IBUs. It has a wee bit of that kind of New England element to it, so the hoppy bitterness isn't too intense in this one, and I think that's geared to, you know, the kind of more modern generation, if you like, of craft drinkers, whereas back in 2015 or whatever, 2016, when we were first getting these beers, can't remember if it was earlier than that, you probably would have had a bit more hoppy bitterness to them. But yeah, the hoppiness to this beer is just at a nice level, I have to say. So yeah, I think about 50 IBUs from a combination of the malt and the hops in this one. But the malt base, like I say, very nice and smooth. Does develop a little bit of dryness at points, but you've got a nice little sweet point, a little bit of a sweet part on this beer as well. But the fruits are lovely and oily. You do get a bit of juiciness from some of the kind of red fruity elements as well, but it's very orangey orientated, and it's got a little bit of a citrusy zest to it on the very tip of the tongue too. But yeah, beautifully executed beer, this one. I think it works very, very well, and it's a very, very nice example of the Imperial Black IPA, so a big thumbs up from me. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. I think that covers this beer pretty well actually. This one was the Jetglo Moon, an Imperial Black IPA from Pentrich Brewing Company in Ripley, just to the north of Nottingham and Derby, in Derbyshire, in the kind of mid, I guess, I do wonder if that's the Midlands in England. It's kind of right in the middle, right in the heart of England actually. But yeah, lovely, lovely beer, this one, and on the basis of this one, I'm really curious about the other one that I bought from these guys, and you'll see that in a little while. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. Awesome beer, this, and I'm really glad that I just decided to go for it and get this. So yeah, awesome stuff. Thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Pentrich Brewing Company. We will return to these guys very, very soon for another kind of unusual beer style, but this one was great. If you're a big fan of these black IPAs and you like a big smooth black IPA and an orangey orientated one as well, then this one comes with my recommendations, absolutely. So yeah, you can get these beers on the House of Trembling Madness, or I think you can buy direct from the brewery as well. They've got a really good range of stuff, and if this beer is anything to go by, this is definitely a brewery to, you know, try a few different things from. But yeah, thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Pentrich Brewing Company, and I'll catch you guys very soon. Slàinte, skål, cheers. The Jetglo Moon 8% Imperial Black IPA from Pentrich Brewing Company in Derbyshire in England. Cheers.